The cold glow of Manhattan's winter lights shimmered against the polished black surface of the Mercedes S-Class as it rolled to a stop in front of the Plaza Hotel. Reporters gathered like hungry wolves, cameras raised, flashes bursting in rapid fire as Michael Hayes stepped out in a tailored tuxedo that gleamed under the chandeliers spilling through the lobby doors. His smile stretched wide, too wide, the kind a man wore when he was desperate to be admired. On his arm clung a young woman in a glittering silver gown, her lipstick too bright, her laugh too sharp to be innocent. "Mr. Hayes, over here, where's your wife tonight?" a reporter shouted. Michael didn't even flinch. He turned just enough to let the cameras catch his good side and said with a rehearsed chuckle, "My wife couldn't make it. But the show must go on, right?" The crowd laughed politely, though whispers rippled beneath the surface. Everyone knew Lauren Hayes had been at his side for every major event the past 7 years. Tonight, her absence was louder than the orchestra warming up inside. Inside the car, 2 blocks away, Lauren sat frozen in the back seat of an Uber, her fingers gripping the edge of her phone. She hadn't planned to watch the red carpet, but the live stream had appeared automatically thanks to the algorithm that still assumed she was interested in her husband's world. She watched Michael posing, preening, basking in attention, while the young woman pressed closer to him like she'd already claimed his shadow. Lauren's heart thudded painfully. She had spent the last month helping the planning committee behind the scenes, reviewing layouts, checking floral arrangements, even recommending the menu. She was supposed to be there not on the arm of her husband, not for vanity, but because she had poured her work and soul into this gala every year. But when she checked the guest list last night, her name was missing, completely erased. She had stared at the blank space where Lauren Hayes should have been, wondering if it was a mistake, until she found an email trail. Michael's email, his request to remove Lauren from the list entirely, because she no longer represents the image we want associated with the brand. Image. That word had sliced her open. Lauren swallowed hard, blinking back, heat rising behind her eyes. The driver glanced at her in the mirror. "Ma'am, are you okay?" No, she wasn't. But she lifted her chin anyway. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. A notification. She almost didn't look until she saw the sender. Carter Foundation. A message preview appeared. "Mrs. Hayes, your arrival is expected. Present the attached credentials at the door." Lauren frowned, confusion mixing with dread. Credentials? Expected? She hadn't told anyone she was coming. She hadn't planned to come at all. Her breath caught as she opened the attachment. It was a special access badge, and beneath it, one line glowed in elegant gold lettering. Major event sponsor, Lauren Hayes. Her voice trembled. This can't be real. But it was real. And inside the plaza, Michael had no idea that the woman he erased from the list was the same woman the entire gala was about to rise for. And the moment Lauren stepped out of that car, nothing in Michael's world would ever be the same. Lauren Hayes had always been the kind of woman people underestimated, soft-spoken, steady, the quiet force behind other people's brilliance. At 34, she had built a solid career as an event designer in Manhattan, weaving magic into every ballroom she touched. Clients adored her warmth, her calm under pressure, the way she understood atmosphere better than most architects. But the one person who should have valued her most, her own husband, treated her as if she were invisible. For years, Lauren had carried the weight of Michael's ambition on her back. She had polished his image, guided his speeches, introduced him to the right donors. Whenever he walked into a room, poised and confident, it was often Lauren who had put in countless hours to make sure the moment looked effortless. She wasn't resentful. She simply believed marriage meant supporta. But somewhere along the way, Michael stopped seeing her as a partner and began seeing her as a burden. It happened slowly at first, little criticisms disguised as suggestions. "Wear something more modern next time. You're too emotional. Don't speak so much at dinner. Let me handle the conversations." Each one stung, but Lauren learned to swallow the hurt. She convinced herself that Manhattan's elite world was stressful, and Michael was simply under pressure. Besides, she knew she didn't fit neatly into the glamorous circles he chased. She preferred bookstores to rooftop parties, warm sweaters to designer gowns, meaningful conversations to attention-seeking gossip. But there was a time when Michael adored those very things about her. They had met in Chicago years ago, long before Manhattan reshaped him. He was visiting for a business conference, and she was designing the floral arrangements for the event. He'd noticed her struggling with a heavy box and rushed to help, making a joke that instantly pulled a laugh out of her. He asked her to coffee. She said yes. And from that moment, it felt like their worlds clicked into place. He called her his calm, his home, his reason to breathe. Lauren often wondered when that man disappeared. The truth gnawed at her heart. Maybe he hadn't changed. Maybe she had simply ignored the signs for too long. As the Uber crept through the traffic near Fifth Avenue, Lauren stared at her reflection in the window. She had pulled her hair into a neat low bun, worn a soft camel coat over a simple dress. She looked practical, ordinary, the kind of woman who didn't make headlines. But she wasn't ashamed of that. What hurt wasn't her simplicity, it was how Michael used it against her. She pulled in a shaky breath. Why did he take me off the list? She whispered to herself. Deep down, she already knew the answer. A few nights earlier, while Michael thought she was asleep, she overheard him on the phone laughing softly, speaking in a low tone he once reserved only for her. His words were blurry, but one line cut straight through the dark. She's not the right look for the brand anymore. Lauren had lain still, staring at the ceiling, feeling something inside her splinter. She didn't confront him. She didn't cry. She simply turned her face to the wall and let the silence swallow her. Now, sitting in the back of the Uber with the Carter Foundation badge glowing on her phone, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a tremor of power, faint but real. Benjamin Carter. It had been years since she last saw him. They had gone to college together, worked on charity projects, bonded over late-night coffees and design ideas. He had been earnest, brilliant, kind, with a quiet admiration for her that she always pretended not to notice. Life pulled them apart, but she remembered the way he used to look at her like she mattered. Why would he put her name on a sponsorship badge? Why tonight of all nights? Before she could process it, the driver slowed to the curb. "We're here, ma'am." Lauren looked up. The plaza's golden light sparkled against the winter sky, and for the first time in months, she felt her breath catch not from pain, but from possibility. She stepped out of the car, heart pounding, and just as her heels touched the pavement, someone called her name. The Plaza Hotel glowed like a palace carved from gold. Its iconic facade, dusted with a thin layer of winter frost, shimmered beneath the streetlights. Inside, the grand lobby buzzed with the polished confidence of Manhattan's elite men in tailored tuxedos, women in gowns that seemed poured from silk and diamonds, voices blending with the distant hum of a live orchestra warming up upstairs. Every inch of the place pulsed with money, status, and expectation. Lauren paused at the entrance, taking it in. The soaring ceilings, the marble floors reflecting the soft light of crystal chandeliers, the scent of luxury fresh lilies, mixed with the faintest hint of expensive perfume. She had walked through these halls dozens of times while helping design previous events, but tonight felt different. She was no longer a silent worker in the background. She was walking in as someone with a name, someone who mattered. At least, according to the badge glowing on her phone. A staff member approached her with a polite smile. "Good evening, ma'am. May I see your credentials?" Her throat tightened. This was the moment she feared. What if the badge wasn't real? What if someone had sent it by mistake? Or worse, as a cruel joke? Hands trembling slightly, she held out her phone. The staff member scanned the QR code. A soft beep. He blinked, straightened his posture instantly, and handed her a physical pass printed on thick matte paper. "Welcome, Mrs. Hayes. Please proceed to the grand ballroom. The committee has been expecting you." Lauren's breath caught. Expecting her. Tonight. Her. As she moved deeper into the hotel, she passed groups of influential guests clustered in conversation: tech executives, philanthropists, fashion icons, politicians pretending not to recognize celebrities pretending not to recognize them. Silver trays carrying flutes of champagne floated through the room in the hands of white-gloved servers. A Cartier bracelet sparkled on a woman's wrist as she gestured. A man checked a message on his iPhone and slipped it into the pocket of his Tom Ford jacket. None of it was unusual for a Manhattan gala, but tonight it all felt sharp, heightened, like the world was watching. Up the staircase, she could already hear the swell of music, a full-string orchestra rehearsing the opening number. That meant guests were settling, finding seats, preparing for speeches and toasts. Her stomach fluttered. As she reached the top of the stairs, she saw the sign, Grand Ballroom. And standing beside the entrance was the Gala's head of security, a broad-shouldered man in a black suit with an earpiece. He scanned each guest's badge before allowing them through. Lauren waited her turn, keeping her posture calm even though her heartbeat skittered. When her turn came, the guard scanned her badge, and his eyebrows shot up. He stepped aside immediately. "Mrs. Hayes, welcome. Your seat is in the sponsors section at the front." Front of the room Michael loved so much. The section he always pushed to get into, claiming it was where real power. Saturday. Lauren swallowed hard. The doors opened, and she stepped inside. The ballroom looked like a dream, towering arrangements of white orchids, candles flickering in tall glass vases, tables draped in ivory linen. The stage glowed beneath spotlights, the orchestra tuning their instruments. Everything was flawless, elegant, humming with anticipation. But across the room, she spotted something that made her blood run cold. Michael, laughing, holding a champagne flute, leaning in close to the young woman on his arm, the same one from the red carpet. And then, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife deeper, he turned just slightly, his gaze sweeping the room. He didn't see Lauren yet, but she saw him, her fingers curled around the strap of her purse. Not because she wanted to approach him, but because something inside her shifted, quiet and fierce. She wasn't here to be erased. She wasn't here to beg. She was here because the Gala, the same event Michael tried to keep her from, was about to put her name on display for the entire city. The orchestra began its opening flourish, the lights dimming in preparation. Lauren inhaled, and at that exact moment, someone gently touched her arm from behind. Lauren stiffened at the touch on her arm, but when she turned, it was only a server passing behind her with a tray of champagne. She exhaled shakily, pressing a hand to her chest. The ballroom was filling fast now, groups clustering, conversations rising, laughter echoing beneath the chandeliers. Still, she couldn't stop glancing toward the far side of the room toward him. Michael Hayes commanded attention the way some men breathed. He stood tall, his slick dark hair perfectly styled, his tuxedo tailored to broadcast success. The people surrounding him leaned in as if he were telling something brilliant, though Lauren knew his stories rarely held substance. What he had, what he always flaunted, was charm. Polished, curated charm that made strangers adore him and wives crumble quietly in parking lots. The young woman hanging on his arm, Sienna Monroe, looked barely past her mid-20s. She wore a sequined champagne gown that clung to her like a second skin, her blonde hair cascading in soft curls. Every time Michael whispered something in her ear, she giggled, tilting her head the way women do when they want to be chosen. Lauren watched, her stomach tightening. She remembered doing that once before she learned that giving Michael admiration only fed his hunger for more. A group of donors approached him, shaking his hand, complimenting his company's recent success. Michael basked in it, as though the spotlight had been waiting solely for him to step beneath it. When one of the donors noticed Sienna, he smiled politely. "And who might this be?" Michael didn't hesitate. "Sienna's joining me tonight in place of my wife," he said smoothly. Lauren wasn't available. Lauren felt the words hit like a slap. Not available. As if she were an appointment he'd canceled. Sienna gave a coy little smile. Michael didn't want to come alone. Shemaine. There it was, the truth tucked behind flirtation. They weren't even pretending. He was parading her like a prize, as though Lauren had never existed beside him for 7 long years. As though she hadn't been the one ironing his shirts before job interviews, encouraging him when his startup nearly failed, comforting him the night he lost his father. She had carried his fears, his hopes, his pride, only to watch him exchange her for something shiny and new. Michael glanced toward the entrance of the ballroom to check who was arriving next, and for a second, his eyes swept dangerously close to where Lauren stood. She ducked behind a cluster of guests, heart hammering. She didn't want him to see her yet not looking like this. Not before she understood why the committee had placed her name among the sponsors. The host stepped onto the stage to welcome everyone, and the lights dimmed except for a soft spotlight on the podium. People drifted toward their assigned tables. Lauren found hers front row, directly across from Michael's. Of course, fate had a sense of humor. She took her seat, smoothing her hands over her dress. The program booklet sat neatly on the table, embossed in gold. When she opened it, her breath stalled. There it was. Major event sponsor. Lauren Hayes. Her name. In print. In the official program. In a roll of honor. She hadn't imagined it. She hadn't dreamed it. Someone had placed her exactly where Michael believed she didn't belong. Across the room, Michael threw his head back in laughter, Sienna at his side, unaware that the very spotlight he believed belonged to him was shifting slowly, silently toward the woman he had tried to erase. Lauren swallowed hard, her pulse quickening. She lifted her eyes and saw Michael glance her way. His body went still. Recognition flickered in his gaze. Shock followed. His jaw tightened. And in that suspended instant across the ballroom, their eyes locked right before Michael began marching straight toward her. Michael cut across the ballroom with the sharp, purposeful stride of a man who believed he owned every inch of the ground he walked on. Guests instinctively stepped aside, glancing between him and Lauren with growing curiosity. The orchestra softened, the murmur of conversations dipped, and for a brief moment, the space between them felt like a stage set for a collision neither of them could stop. Lauren forced herself to sit tall as he approached, though her heartbeat drummed against her ribs. She could feel eyes gathering like magnets, recognition, speculation, the subtle thrill of witnessing drama unfold in real time. Manhattan galas weren't just about charity, they were about stories, and this one was unfolding faster than anyone expected. Lauren, Michael hissed, stopping beside her chair, his smile tight and brittle. What are you doing here? She lifted her gaze, calm on the surface, though her stomach twisted. Attending the gala, he scoffed, leaning closer so only she could hear. Don't play games with me. You weren't invited. She reached for the program booklet and turned it toward him, letting her finger rest beside her name printed in elegant script. Clearly, I was. Michael's eyes darkened. He snatched the booklet, scanning the page as though trying to find a loophole. This is wrong. This is a mistake. A few guests nearby exchanged glances. Lauren's voice was steady. It doesn't seem like a mistake to me. Before Michael could respond, Sienna arrived in a flurry of perfume and insecurity, looping her arm possessively through his. Baby, what's going on? Everyone's watching. 2. Michael straightened immediately, reshaping his expression into one of polished annoyance. There's been some confusion with the list, he said loud enough for those around them to hear. Security must have let her in by accident. Lauren felt her throat tighten. He wasn't just dismissing her, he was erasing her, and doing it publicly. Actually, a voice said from nearby, there's no mistake. Lauren turned. It was the event coordinator, a woman Lauren recognized from previous galas. Her posture was crisp, authoritative. Mrs. Hayes is our major sponsor tonight. She has full access to every section of the ballroom. A ripple passed through the guests' surprise, whispers, subtle head turns. Michael's face drained of color. Sponsor? Sienna repeated, blinking rapidly. Like actual sponsor? The coordinator nodded. The primary one. Without her contribution, this event wouldn't have reached its fundraising threshold. Sienna's grip on Michael loosened. Lauren didn't move. She didn't need to. The truth was doing the work for her. Michael recovered quickly, too quickly. He forced a chuckle, patting Sienna's hand, as if none of this fazed him. Well, that must be a misunderstanding, he said, turning back to Lauren with icy confidence. Because Lauren doesn't have the resources to sponsor something of this scale. A low murmur rose around them. The insult hovered in the air, heavy and cutting. Lauren felt the words settle over her like dust, familiar pain, familiar disappointment. But before she could respond, the ballroom's microphone crackled as the host stepped on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. And tonight, we have a very special acknowledgement for someone who helped make this gala possible. Jess. Michael smirked, leaning toward Lauren. Let's see how far you take this little act. Lauren didn't have to answer. The universe did it for her. Spotlights swept the ballroom, narrowing to a soft glow at the front where the sponsor's table was located directly where Lauren's Saturday. Cameras turned. Phones lifted. The host smiled brightly. Our deepest gratitude goes to our major event sponsor, Mrs. Lauren Hayes. A wave of applause erupted, echoing beneath the chandeliers. Michael froze. Sienna's hand slipped from his arm entirely. Lauren remained seated, the applause washing over her like a tide, steady, warm, undeniable. And through the thunder of clapping hands, Michael leaned in with a face carved from disbelief. "Lauren, what did you do?" he whispered. And that was the moment the room turned to witness their marriage truly unravel. The applause thundered around her. But Lauren felt strangely hollow inside, as if her body were a vase holding too many cracks. She kept her posture straight, eyes forward, but each clap echoed like a bruise forming beneath the skin. The host continued speaking, praising her contribution, her generosity, her support for children's literacy programs across New York, initiatives she genuinely believed in. Yet the words floated above her head like they were meant for someone else. Because all Lauren could feel was exhaustion. 7 years of marriage. 7 years of holding their life together. 7 years of shrinking herself small enough for Michael's ego to grow without limit. The applause wasn't validation. It was a reminder of how deeply she had disappeared to make him shine. She lowered her gaze to the tablecloth, her breath catching. A memory flashed through her mind, standing beside Michael at a previous gala, gently straightening his bow tie, whispering encouragement before his speech. He had cupped her cheek then, eyes soft, promising they were a team. Now he looked at her like she was something that had crawled onto his shoes. The contrast hurt more than any insult spoken aloud. Across the table, a couple whispered quietly, their eyes flicking to her with curiosity. Sienna stared at Lauren with something between confusion and fear, while Michael tried to compose himself, jaw clenched so tightly she could almost hear the tension crack. Lauren suddenly needed air. Her fingers dug into the table as she forced herself up from her chair, murmuring a quiet excuse to the person beside her. She slipped away before anyone could stop her, weaving through clusters of polished guests who seemed to glow beneath the ballroom lights while her own vision blurred. The hallway outside felt colder, quieter. She leaned against the wall, one hand pressed to her stomach, fighting the ache rising in her throat. Her breathing became shallow, uneven. The weight of everything, Michael's betrayal, the humiliation, the sudden spotlight, crushed her like a stone. Her phone buzzed in her clutch, startling her. A text. Unknown number. "Don't let him get to you. Step outside for a moment. I'm here." Her heart stuttered. Benjamin. Even after all these years, she recognized the tone, steady, warm, protective. The text wasn't elaborate. It didn't offer pity. It simply felt like a hand reaching out in the dark. Lauren blinked back tears and slipped out a side door leading toward the terrace overlooking the city. Cold winter air swept over her skin, making her shiver. But the quiet was a relief sharper than anything she'd felt all night. She gripped the stone railing and let herself breathe. From here, she could see the Manhattan skyline shimmering like a crown. She had always loved the city from a distance, beautiful, alive, glowing with possibility. But standing here now, she felt like an outsider again. A woman too tired, too bruised, too discarded to fit the world Michael worshipped. A single tear slipped down her cheek. She swiped it away angrily. How had she let herself become this version of Lauren? The one who apologized when she hadn't done wrong. The one who smoothed tensions Michael created. The one who walked on eggshells hoping for scraps of affection. She whispered into the cold air. "I don't even recognize myself anymore." A soft sound behind her, a careful, hesitant footstep. She straightened, wiping her face quickly. "Please," she said without turning. "I just need a minute." But the voice that answered wasn't Michael's. "It's me," the man said quietly. "Lauren, are you all right?" She froze. She knew that voice. Benjamin Carter stepped into view, the warm light from the ballroom catching the edges of his navy coat. His expression wasn't curious like the other guests. It wasn't judgmental. It was something deeper, concern layered with familiarity, with a gentleness she hadn't felt in years. Lauren's breath hitched as he took a small step closer, keeping his tone soft, grounding. "You don't have to face this alone," he said. "Not tonight." And in that moment, with Manhattan glowing behind him, Lauren felt her knees weaken, not from fear, but from finally being seen. For a long moment, Lauren couldn't speak. The cold Manhattan air stung her cheeks, but Benjamin's presence warmed the space around her in a way she hadn't expected. He had always carried a quiet strength, nothing loud, nothing boastful, but steady, solid, reliable. A contrast so sharp to Michael's polished theatrics that it almost hurt to look at him. "Ben," she finally whispered, her voice shaking. "Why are you here?" He offered a faint smile, something soft and reassuring. "This gala means a lot to my foundation, and so do the people behind it." Lauren frowned. "But the badge, the sponsorship, I didn't donate anything." "I don't understand." Benjamin stepped beside her, leaving just enough space so she didn't feel overwhelmed. "I know," he said gently. "You didn't donate financially, but you built the groundwork for the entire literacy initiative years ago. Do you remember that?" Her lips parted. Memories flickered: late nights in college planning community outreach programs, volunteering at children's reading events, creating posters, spreadsheets, ideas. Always with Ben, always side by side. "You were the heart of all of it," he continued. "When the foundation grew, when it became what it is today, a big part of that success came from the systems you created, from your compassion, from your work." She blinked, overwhelmed. "Ben, that was forever ago." "Oh, maybe for you," he said softly. "Not for me." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint hum of traffic below the terrace. Lauren wrapped her arms around herself, trembling. "Michael said I didn't belong here, that I wasn't part of that world anymore, that I didn't represent him well." Benjamin's expression hardened, the warmth in his eyes shifting into something protective, almost fierce. "He erased you from the list because he's threatened, not because you don't belong." The words felt like a bomb, but also like a wound reopening. Lauren lowered her gaze. "I didn't want to come tonight. When I saw him with her," she swallowed, her voice cracking. "I felt so small." "You're not small," Benjamin said, stepping closer. "You've never been small. Michael made you feel that way so he could look bigger." Fresh tears slipped down Lauren's cheek, and she turned away quickly, embarrassed. But Benjamin reached out a gentle, careful gesture and offered her a crisp handkerchief. She hesitated, then took it. He didn't wipe her tears for her. He didn't touch her without permission. He simply stood there, letting her breathe. And somehow, that made all the difference. When she finally steadied herself, she asked the question that had been gnawing inside her. "Why did you put my name as the sponsor, Ben? Why not use your own? You're the one funding the gala." "Shar." He exhaled slowly, looking out over the city. "Because the work we're celebrating tonight began with you. Because this event needed to honor the person who deserved recognition." She stared at him, stunned. "And," he added quietly, "because I heard what Michael did." Her stomach tightened. "The list? That. And," he hesitated, jaw tightening. "Lauren, he bragged about replacing you with someone who fit his image better. Some people heard him. Word got around. Port." Humiliation washed over her, hot, painful, suffocating. Ben's eyes softened as he saw her reaction. "I didn't want you to walk into that ballroom as the woman he replaced. I wanted you to walk in as the woman he'll regret losing for the rest of his life." Her breath hitched. This was the twist she never saw coming. Not a dramatic reveal of secrets, not gossip, not scandal, but someone standing up for her. Someone remembering her worth when she forgot it herself. Someone seeing her. Lauren's voice trembled. "Ben, why are you doing all this for me?" He hesitated only a moment before answering. "Because, Lauren, I never stopped caring." Her heart thudded painfully, a blend of fear, hope, confusion, and something deeper, something she hadn't let herself feel in a long time. Before she could respond, the terrace door swung open with a sharp crack. Michael stood there, face twisted, eyes furious. "Lauren," he growled, stepping forward, "you and I need to talk. Now." Two. And for the first time ever, Benjamin stepped between them, blocking Michael cold. Benjamin didn't raise his voice. He didn't posture or glare the way Michael did when he felt threatened. He simply stepped forward, calm, steady, immovable, like a wall separating Lauren from everything that had been crushing her for years. "Back up, Michael," Benjamin said, his tone low but firm. "You're upsetting her." Michael scoffed, an incredulous laugh bursting out of him. "Upsetting her? She doesn't belong here to begin with. This is a professional event, not a reunion for jealous college boys." Benjamin's jaw tightened, but he didn't move an inch. Lauren felt the tension humming between them like electricity. For years, she had stood alone in every argument, every misunderstanding, every moment Michael made her question her worth. Tonight, someone finally stood with her. It was a strange feeling, foreign, comforting, terrifying. But it was also a spark of something she thought she had lost forever. Her voice, when it emerged, was thin but steady. "Michael, I don't want to talk to you right now." He snapped his head toward her. "Lauren, don't embarrass yourself. Come with me. We need to fix this before the donors think you're a four." "Think she's what?" Benjamin cut in sharply. "A woman who's finally being recognized for work you spent years taking credit for?" Michael's face reddened, his arrogance straining beneath humiliation. "Stay out of this. This is between my wife and me." Lauren let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "Ex-wife," she whispered. Michael froze. The word hung in the icy air between them. Lauren felt it vibrate through her bones. It wasn't legally finalized yet, but emotionally, spiritually, truthfully, it had become reality the moment he erased her from his life. Michael stepped closer, ignoring Benjamin. "Don't be dramatic. You're upset. This isn't the time." "See." Lauren straightened her shoulders. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't shrink beneath his glare. "No," she said softly. "It's exactly the time." Benjamin placed a gentle hand on her back, not possessive, not controlling, just reassuring. A reminder she wasn't alone. And something shifted inside her. A warmth, a strength, a clarity. "Michael," she said, forcing herself to meet his eyes, "I'm done letting you decide who I am. I'm done fighting for space in a life where I'm not wanted." His jaw dropped. "Don't be ridiculous. You wouldn't survive a month without me." Benjamin let out a quiet, humorless laugh. "She's already surviving just fine." Lauren felt heat rush to her cheeks. Not from embarrassment, but from awakening, like she'd stepped out of a shadow she hadn't realized she'd been living in. "I'm not here to fight with you," she said. "I'm here because I earned my place. Something you can't take away." "Will." Michael's eyes flicked between them, calculating, desperate. "You're making a fool of yourself, Lauren." But even his voice sounded different now, less powerful, less certain. Cracks forming in the mask he'd worn for years. Benjamin took a small step closer to Lauren. "Why don't we get you ready for the presentation?" he murmured. "You deserve to walk into that ballroom the way you should have always been seen." She nodded. They left Michael standing alone on the terrace, the cold seeping into his perfect tuxedo while the door closed behind them. Inside, Benjamin guided her through a quiet corridor toward the VIP lounge reserved for presenters and sponsors. Warm lighting cast a golden glow over the space, reflecting off the mirrors and elegant decor. A makeup artist and stylist paused mid-preparation when they saw them enter. "This is Mrs. Hayes," Benjamin said gently. "She'll need assistance." "Shoo." The stylist's eyes widened. "Of course, anything she needs." Before Lauren could protest, the team gently ushered her into a seat. Brushes, powders, and soft lighting surrounded her. As they worked, she looked into the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her posture straighter, her eyes clearer, her expression alive. She wasn't becoming someone new. She was reclaiming who she used to be. The makeup artist stepped back, smiling. "You look stunning." Lauren swallowed hard. "I feel different." Benjamin approached slowly, his voice soft. "You look like yourself again." Her chest tightened a mix of gratitude and something deeper, warmer. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. A staff member peeked in. "We need Mrs. Hayes backstage." "It's time for the announcement." Lauren took a steady breath. She stood, and for the first time in years, she felt powerful. But when the doors opened, Michael was waiting there, eyes burning. As if he had one last card to play. Michael stood in the hallway like a storm blocking the exit, arms crossed, jaw clenched so tight a vein pulsed at his temple. The soft lighting of the backstage corridor did nothing to soften him. If anything, it made the sharpness of his expression more pronounced, the look of a man who realized the world was beginning to slip out of his grasp. Lauren froze for half a second. But then she remembered the mirror. The woman she had seen there. Her shoulders pulled back naturally, and she lifted her chin. "Move, Michael," she said quietly. "I need to go." "You're not stepping onto that stage," he shot back. His voice was low enough not to echo, but the anger beneath it vibrated through the air. You're not going to humiliate me. Lauren blinked. Humiliate you? You erased my name from the guest list. Michael stepped closer, lowering his tone further. I did what had to be done. You don't fit the image anymore. But you walking up there, letting them praise you for something you didn't do, that's pathetic. A sharp laugh came from behind Lauren. Benjamin. He walked forward, his presence instantly grounding her. She earned every bit of recognition she's about to receive, he said. And you know it. Michael glared at him. This has nothing to do with you. Actually, Benjamin replied calmly, it has everything to do with her. And she's walking on that stage whether you approve or not. Lauren felt something settle inside her, a steady flame building, warming her from the inside out. She touched Benjamin's arm lightly, a signal that she wanted to handle this herself. Then she turned fully toward Michael. You don't control this moment, she said softly. You don't control me anymore. Michael's breath hitched, as if she'd slapped him. For years, he had grown accustomed to Lauren's quiet compliance, to her gentle whispers, to the way she folded down her own edges to avoid confrontation. Seeing her stand with strength rather than fear unsettled him. You're going to regret this, he said, his voice shaking with barely contained panic. People are going to ask questions. They'll want explanations. You can't handle that kind of pressure. Lauren stepped past him, the fabric of her gown brushing lightly against his side. I've handled everything you threw at me, she murmured. I'll handle this too. The stage manager appeared at the end of the hall. Mrs. Hayes? We're ready for you. Lauren inhaled deeply, feeling her heart drum with excitement, not dread. When she took her first step toward the stage, it felt like stepping into sunlight after years of shadow. The ballroom dimmed as she entered from the wings, the spotlight adjusting to follow her path. A murmur spread across the room, hushed admiration, surprise, even awe. Not for her dress or her makeup, but for her aura. She carried herself like someone who finally understood her worth. As she reached the center of the stage, applause began tentative at first, then building, like a tide washing forward. The orchestra softened into a gentle melody, underscoring the moment. Lauren stood behind the podium, steadying herself on the wood. She looked out across the ballroom, the donors, the dignitaries, the gilded chandeliers reflecting the light like stars. She began to speak. Her voice was calm, warm, sincere. She talked about the early days of volunteering, the impact literacy programs had on children, the importance of compassion over image. Her words flowed naturally, not rehearsed, not embellished, just real. People listened. People connected. People applauded. As she spoke, she could see Michael at their table. His expression, once smug and dismissive, was now something else entirely. Fear. Because the room wasn't looking at him. They were looking at her. When Lauren finished, the ballroom erupted into a standing ovation. Hundreds of people rising for her. For the woman Michael tried to erase. For the woman he thought he'd broken beyond repair. Lauren felt the applause vibrate through her chest. She had never been applauded like this firsthand. Never been seen so clearly, valued so publicly. Benjamin was standing too, smiling with quiet pride. She stepped back from the podium, heart pounding with something electric. But as she walked off stage, the applause fading behind her, a staff member rushed toward her, breathless. Mrs. Hayes, she said urgently, you need to see this immediately. It's about your husband. Lauren's pulse jumped, and when the woman handed her a folded document, Michael's darkest secret spilled out before her eyes. Lauren stared down at the folded document in her hand, her fingers trembling slightly as she opened it. The thick ivory paper, stamped with an official seal, felt heavier than it should. She scanned the first few lines, and her breath caught. Unauthorized fund transfers. Misallocated donor money. Transactions routed through shell accounts. Michael Hayes listed as the approving officer for every single one. It wasn't just embarrassing. It was criminal. Where did this come from? She whispered. The staff member lowered her voice. A whistleblower from your husband's company delivered it to the committee. They said the board has been investigating him quietly for months. Tonight, the evidence reached us. Lauren's heartbeat thudded painfully in her ears. Michael had always been arrogant, reckless, hungry for status, but she never imagined he would risk fraud charges. She felt a wave of nausea rise. Why are you giving this to me? Lauren asked, struggling to breathe. Because, the woman said, You're the sponsor of this event, and the committee believes you deserve to know before we take action." Before she could respond, a harsh voice cut through the hallway. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Michael stormed toward her. His tie loosened, his expression contorted with fury. He ripped the document from her hands, scanning it quickly before glaring up with wild disbelief. "Who gave you this?" he barked. Lauren held her ground. "You tell me. Because it looks like you've been stealing donor money." Michael's face contorted. "That's false. This is taken out of context. These were strategic reallocations. Reallocations don't involve offshore accounts," Benjamin said, stepping forward from behind Lauren. "We both know what this is." Michael swung around. "Stay out of it. This is between me and my wife. Shan, ex-wife." Lauren corrected, her voice steady despite the quake inside her. Michael's eyes flashed, wounded pride sharpening into venom. "You think you can stand here looking pretty and pretending you're better than me now? You wouldn't even have a life in this city if it wasn't for me." Lauren felt something inside her snap, not anger, but clarity. Cold, clean clarity. "You're right," she said softly. "You gave me a life here. But you also took every ounce of confidence I had. You belittled me. You lied to me. And tonight, you publicly humiliated me." She took a breath. "This paper isn't the first thing you've destroyed, but it will be the last." Michael stepped closer, voice dropping dangerously. "You hand that over, and you'll ruin me." "No," Lauren said. "You ruined yourself." He scoffed a hollow, desperate sound. "You won't do anything. You never do. You cry. You hide. You stay silent. That's who you are." Benjamin's expression turned to steel. "Not anymore." "Par." Lauren looked into Michael's eyes, searching for even a flicker of the man she once loved. But all she saw was panic dressed in arrogance. "I'm done being silent," she said. Just then, the ballroom doors opened behind them, and the head of the charity committee stepped out, accompanied by 2 board members. Their expressions carried the heavy weight of decision. "Mr. Hayes," the head of the committee said firmly, "we need to speak with you. Privately." Michael paled. "No. Not now. This can't crom." But the board members moved forward. Guests passing in the hallway slowed, staring openly now, whispers rising like static. The fall of a golden man, and the rise of the wife he tried to erase, was unfolding right before their eyes. Lauren felt her chest tighten not with fear, but with something close to release. Benjamin placed a hand on her back, grounding her. "Are you okay?" "I think," she whispered, "for the first time in a long time, yes." "Show." But then, another committee member rushed out of the ballroom, breathless. "Mrs. Hayes," she called into the hallway, eyes wide. "You need to come back inside. Someone just made an announcement about you on stage." Lauren's brow furrowed. "About me?" The woman nodded urgently. "Yes. And the entire ballroom is waiting for your response." The moment Lauren stepped back into the ballroom, energy shifted. Conversations dimmed, heads turned. Whispered ripples spread from table to table, as eyes followed her across the gleaming floor. The orchestra played softly, the lights a warm halo above her, but the air felt charged like the room itself had been holding its breath until she returned. At the podium stood the chairman of the charity committee, a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and a calm, authoritative presence. He offered Lauren a respectful nod as she approached. "Mrs. Hayes," he said into the microphone, "thank you for returning. Before you left the room, we were preparing to make an announcement." He paused, letting the silence settle. "One that concerns your contributions, past and present." The ballroom grew still. Lauren stopped a few feet from the stage, her hands clasped tightly. "Contributions?" she murmured. Benjamin had caught up behind her, staying close enough to steady her without crowding her. She felt his quiet support like a warm anchor between her shoulder blades. The chairman gestured toward the large screen behind him. "Throughout the evening, we honored the generosity of those who helped build and sustain this event. But what we haven't shared yet." The screen flickered, illuminating the ballroom with soft light. "Is the foundation this work stands on." Lauren watched, bewildered. Suddenly, photos appeared grainy but heartfelt images of college-aged volunteers organizing book drives, tutoring children, and setting up literacy booths at community fairs, and in nearly every one of them, there she was, younger, hopeful, smiling brightly with her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, sometimes holding a clipboard, sometimes reading to a child, sometimes laughing with Benjamin in the background. Lauren gasped. She hadn't seen these pictures in years. In the early days, the chairman said warmly, before the Carter Foundation became one of the most respected philanthropic names in New York, these programs were built by a small, passionate group of volunteers. Among them, one person distinguished herself not only with creativity and dedication, but with heart. The screen zoomed in on a photo of a younger Lauren painting a mural for a children's reading corner, her face lit with joy. This woman, the chairman continued, created the blueprint for what became our literacy initiative. The strategies she drafted, the connections she built, the countless hours she invested. Without her, this foundation would not be what it is today. A hush swept the room. Even the clinking of glasses stilled. Lauren's throat tightened. She had forgotten. Not the work, never that, but how deeply she'd once loved building something meaningful, something real, something that wasn't about image or status or being enough for someone else. She never sought recognition, the chairman said. But tonight, we believe it's time she receives it. He smiled gently. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to acknowledge the original architect of this program, Mrs. Lauren Hayes. A wave of applause rose, warmer, deeper, more genuine than before. It wrapped around her like a long-lost embrace. Lauren stood frozen, tears burning behind her eyes, unable to speak. Then another voice rang out. A familiar one. Benjamin. He stepped onto the stage, not taking the microphone, but speaking directly to the crowd with the sincerity only he could carry. I wouldn't be standing here today if it weren't for her. He glanced at Lauren, something unspoken shimmering between them. She believed in this long before anyone else did. Even before I did. The room murmured with admiration. Lauren pressed a hand to her chest, overwhelmed. She could feel Michael's stare from across the ballroom, shock, confusion, and something bitter twisting beneath it. But for the first time in years, his reaction didn't matter. This moment wasn't about him. It was about her. The chairman lowered the microphone, indicating the stage was now hers. Mrs. Hayes, would you like to say anything? Lauren hesitated. She wasn't ready, not after the confrontation, not after the revelations, not while still shaking inside. But she stepped forward anyway, because she wasn't the woman who hid anymore. She took the microphone, her voice soft but steady. I don't know what to say. I'm overwhelmed. Truly. She paused, letting her breath settle. But if tonight has taught me anything, it's that what we build with kindness never disappears. Even when we do. The audience leaned in, moved. She lifted her chin. And I'm grateful to be reminded of who I was, and who I still am. The applause was instant and thunderous. But in the middle of it, a sudden commotion erupted near the entrance. Raised voices, hurried footsteps, someone shouting Michael's name. Lauren's blood ran cold, because two uniformed officers had just entered the ballroom, and they were walking straight toward Michael Hayes. Gasps rippled across the ballroom as the two officers stepped forward, their uniforms stark against the soft gold of the chandeliers. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Chairs scraped quietly as guests rose to their feet, instinctively drawn toward the unfolding scene like moths to flame. Michael stood frozen near the edge of the room, his complexion draining from a proud, polished executive glow to a sickly shade of white. His hands twitched at his sides, as if deciding between running and pretending none of this concerned him. Mr. Michael Hayes, one of the officers called out, voice firm but controlled. The ballroom inhaled as one. Sienna, standing beside him, whispered sharply, Michael, what's happening? But he didn't answer her. He couldn't. His jaw locked, his eyes darting wildly, scanning for exits, anything to escape the spotlight he once craved. Lauren's breath caught, her heart accelerating. She hadn't expected it to unfold publicly. Not like this. Yet a part of her, deep, wounded, and human, recognized the irony. The man who lived off image was about to have his exposed in front of Manhattan's most powerful crowd. The officer stepped closer. Sir, we need to speak with you regarding an ongoing financial investigation. Whispers swelled like a rising tide. Words like fraud, embezzlement, and scandal floated through the air, carried on shocked breaths. Michael finally found his voice shaky, defensive. This is absurd. This is a misunderstanding. He raised his hands in a dramatic sweep, turning to the crowd as if performing. Someone is trying to ruin me. This is political. The officer remained unmoved. Sir, you'll have a chance to explain everything at the station. Sienna stepped back slowly, her expression twisting from confusion to horror as she put distance between them. Her hand slid off his arm like it burned her. Michael saw it. Sienna, baby, don't leave. Don't you dare walk away, he hissed. She froze. You told me everything was under control. He grabbed her wrist, too hard. She yanked it back. You lied, she whispered, low and cold. You lied about everything. The room watched, as Michael's fade cracked completely. No, he spat. It's Lauren. It's always been Lauren. She's doing this, she's trying to destroy me. A collective murmur spread. Dozens of eyes turned to Lauren, whose stomach twisted not with guilt, but with a heavy, aching disbelief. After everything he'd done, even now he used her as a shield. Benjamin stepped forward before she could react. She didn't create those documents, he said, voice calm but cutting. Your own people did. And they came here because even they couldn't cover for you anymore. Michael's rage flickered, collapsing under the weight of truth. The officers stepped in. Mr. Hayes, please turn around. No, Michael barked, panic flaring. You can't do this in front of all these people. I'm respected. Turn around, the officer repeated. His voice had the finality of a closing door. Michael's shoulders sagged. Defeat real, raw defeat settled over him. Slowly, grudgingly, he turned. The officers secured the cuffs with a soft metallic click that echoed louder than the orchestra had all night. Gasps, murmurs, phones raised discreetly. His downfall was no longer a private failure, it had become a public reckoning. Sienna backed away into the crowd, disappearing without a backward glance. The officers began walking him toward the exit. Michael twisted his head, eyes locking onto Lauren's. You did this, he seethed. You think they care about you? You think anyone does? Lauren held his gaze. Her voice was gentle, almost mournful. No, Michael. You did this to yourself. For the first time, he looked small. Small in a way his arrogance had once disguised. Small in a way truth could no longer hide. As the ballroom doors opened and swallowed him, a strange silence settled, a silence of justice, of closure, of a chapter ending at last. Benjamin stepped beside Lauren, voice soft. You okay? She exhaled shakily. I don't know. He touched her arm lightly. This isn't your burden anymore. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it never truly had been. But before Lauren could fully process the weight lifting off her shoulders, the chairman approached with a grave but urgent expression. Mrs. Hayes, he said, there's something else you need to know. Something involving the future of this program and your role in it. Lauren blinked, startled. My role? He nodded. Yes. Because tonight, the board made a decision and it concerns you directly. Lauren stared at the chairman, unsure if she'd heard him correctly. The applause, the arrest, the chaos, all of it still echoed inside her, leaving her unsteady, as if she were standing on shifting ground. Benjamin took a small step closer, quietly protective, but careful not to overshadow her. What do you mean, a decision? Lauren asked. The chairman offered a gentle smile, the kind reserved for moments that carried weight. Mrs. Hayes, would you walk with me? He said, gesturing toward a quieter corridor leading away from the crowd. Benjamin nodded for her to go, promising with a look that he'd be right here when she returned. She followed the chairman down the hallway, her heels tapping softly against the marble. The noise of the ballroom faded behind them, replaced with a stillness that made Lauren's pulse louder in her ears. When they reached a small private lounge, the chairman motioned for her to sit. She did, folding her hands in her lap like she used to do before presenting a design proposal, except tonight, she had no idea what she was preparing for. Mrs. Hayes, he began, I've been with this organization for more than 20 years. I've met extraordinary people, visionaries, donors, leaders. But your story tonight, it reminded me of something many of us forget. Lauren blinked. What is that? That the heart behind a mission matters more than the money funding it. She swallowed hard. I just did what I could back then. I never imagined it would matter years later. But it did matter, he said, leaning forward. You built the foundation of our literacy initiative. You created systems that still operate today. And more importantly, you inspired people, including Benjamin. Her breath caught at the mention of his name. The chairman continued. Tonight, the board saw what you represent: integrity, resilience, and an understanding of our work that goes beyond numbers or titles. Lauren shook her head gently. I'm not a leader. I'm just someone who volunteered. Everything you've built, it's so much bigger now. That's precisely why we need someone like you, he said. She stared at him, confused. Need me? He smiled, warm and steady. The board voted tonight to restructure our leadership team, and they unanimously agreed to offer you the position of senior advisor for program development. Lauren's mouth parted in shock. I don't know what to say. It's a paid role, he added. Flexible hours. Creative authority. You'd help shape the future of our education programs. Your history with the foundation makes you uniquely qualified. Lauren felt her eyes sting. For years, she had been told she wasn't enough, not polished enough, not glamorous enough, not the right image for the world Michael worshipped. Yet here sat a leader of one of Manhattan's most respected foundations, telling her she was wanted, needed, valued. Why me? She whispered. The chairman regarded her with a sincerity that softened her heart. Because you walked into that ballroom tonight carrying the weight of humiliation, and turned it into purpose. Because when you spoke on stage, people listened not out of obligation, but out of respect. And because strength like yours doesn't come from power, it comes from surviving what should have broken you. Lauren wiped a tear that slipped down her cheek. I don't know if I'm ready. Why? No one ever feels ready for the moments that change their life, he said kindly. But they still come. She let the words sink in. After so many years of living in Michael's shadow, she felt the shape of her own future forming solid, bright, hers. A life she could build, not borrow. After a long moment, she inhaled deeply. Yes, she said softly. I'd be honored. The chairman's smile widened. We're grateful to have you. Joe? He stood and opened the door, gesturing for her to return to the ballroom. Come. There are people eager to congratulate you. As Lauren stepped back into the hallway, something inside her felt newly aligned, steady, confident, whole. She no longer felt like a woman holding her breath. She felt like one finally exhaling. But as she approached the ballroom doors, she noticed Benjamin waiting for her, hands clasped, expression unreadable. When he saw her, he exhaled slowly, as if he'd been holding his breath too. What happened? He asked gently. Lauren smiled, her eyes warm. They offered me a position. A real one. With the foundation. Benjamin's eyes softened in a way she had never seen before. I'm proud of you, more than you know. She felt her heart lift right before he stepped closer, voice dropping to a tender, vulnerable register. There's something I need to tell you too. See. Because what happened tonight made me realize I can't keep holding back anymore. For a moment, Lauren couldn't breathe. Benjamin stood only a few feet away. But the weight of his words, I can't keep holding back anymore, hung between them like a fragile, glowing thread. His eyes held something she hadn't seen in years. Not pity, not admiration. Something deeper, something she wasn't sure she was ready to name. But before she could speak, a commotion erupted near the ballroom entrance. Voices raised, sharp, panicked. Benjamin instinctively stepped in front of her, shielding her from whatever new wave of chaos was brewing. The crowd shifted like a restless sea turning, whispering, dividing. And then Lauren saw him. Michael, disheveled, red-faced, angrier than she had ever seen him. He had somehow slipped away from the officers long enough to barge back into the ballroom. His tie hung crooked around his neck. His hair, usually perfect, was mussed from stress and rage. The polished executive mask had completely shattered. Lauren, he shouted, ignoring the horrified stares of donors and board members. You can't walk away from me. Not after everything. Guests backed up, giving him a wide, uneasy circle. This wasn't the smooth, charming CEO they knew. This was a man unraveling in real time. Lauren's stomach tightened, but she stepped slightly out from behind Benjamin. She wouldn't hide. Not tonight. You need to leave, she said firmly, her voice projecting across the ballroom with surprising strength. No, Michael barked. Not until you hear me. He stumbled forward, pointing an accusing finger at Benjamin. This is his fault. He turned you against me. He's always wanted you. And you. He jabbed the air in her direction. You're letting him win because you're too weak to think for yourself. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Benjamin's expression changed, no longer calm, no longer measured. It was the protective, barely restrained fury of a man who had reached his limits. But before he could respond, Lauren lifted a hand lightly, silently asking him to let her handle this. She turned to Michael, her voice steady. Weak? I stayed with you when you belittled me. When you lied. When you made me feel invisible. That wasn't weakness. That was loyalty. Love. Her throat tightened, but she didn't look away. But staying with you now, that would be weakness. A murmur of agreement swept through the watching crowd. Michael's chest heaved. His world, once so tightly controlled, was slipping through his fingers like sand. You think you're better than me now? Because these people clapped for you. Because you have a fancy title and a pity job. It's not pity, the chairman said sharply from behind the podium. It's merit. Something you may not recognize. Michael spun toward him, unhinged. You're all hypocrites. Security moved swiftly but cautiously, positioning themselves along the edges of the room. Lauren felt Benjamin inch closer, not touching her, but close enough to shield her if Michael lunged. She could feel the tension radiating off him. He was giving her space, but every muscle in his body was ready. Michael staggered forward, voice cracking. Lauren, we can fix this. We can still fix us. Just tell them you didn't mean for this to happen. Tell them I'm not the villain. The words broke something inside her, not because they tempted her, but because she realized he truly didn't understand. There is no US left to fix, she said softly. And you became the villain all on your own. Michael's face twisted, pain, denial, pride, anger all clashing inside him like a storm he could no longer control. You're going to regret this, he whispered, voice trembling. You think he cares about you? He jerked his chin toward Benjamin. He's using you. Just watch. He'll leave too. Lauren didn't react. She didn't flinch. She simply stood there, steady, grounded, whole for the first time in years. Security stepped forward. Mr. Hayes, you need to come with us. Michael's gaze darted wildly around the room, desperate for an ally. But every person he looked at turned away. Even Sienna had vanished. He was alone, utterly alone. And in that moment, he seemed to finally realize it. As officers reached for him, he pointed one last shaking finger at Lauren. You're making a mistake, he whispered. Lauren lifted her chin. No, I'm finally making a choice. Security seized his arms and escorted him out. No applause followed this time, just a heavy silence filled with consequence. Benjamin turned to Lauren slowly, his voice low. You handled that with more grace than he ever deserved. She exhaled, feeling years of weight lift from her chest. I'm just tired of shrinking. Fine is. Benjamin's expression softened, deep, warm, proud. Then don't shrink anymore. But before she could answer, a familiar voice echoed from the DJ booth. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our new senior advisor, Mrs. Lauren Hayes, to the dance floor. Lauren froze. Benjamin looked at her, and slowly he extended his hand. May I have this dance? For a long, suspended second, Lauren simply stared at Benjamin's outstretched hand. The ballroom lights softened around them, casting a warm glow over the polished floor. Guests watched in quiet anticipation, sensing that the night's chaos had finally given way to something gentler, something unexpected and tender. Lauren's heart thumped in her chest. After everything, the humiliation, the unraveling of her marriage, the public confrontation, her feet felt rooted to the ground. Dancing felt too intimate, too exposed, too much like stepping into a future she wasn't sure she deserved. Benjamin didn't rush her. He kept his hand extended, steady, patient, his eyes inviting but never demanding. If you're not ready, he said softly, we can just step outside, or sit, or breathe. Whatever you need. His voice, low and reassuring, wrapped around her like a soft blanket. It wasn't pressure, it was presence. That was the difference. Michael commanded. Benjamin offered. Lauren drew a slow breath, feeling her heartbeat calm in the warmth of his sincerity. I haven't danced in a long time, she admitted quietly. His lips curved into a knowing smile. Then, "It's my honor to remind you." A flush warmed her cheeks. Slowly, hesitantly, she slid her hand into his. His fingers closed around hers, gentle, warm, grounding. A collective sigh of relief moved through the watching crowd, and the orchestra, sensing the shift, began to play a softer, more romantic melody. Benjamin guided her onto the center of the dance floor. His hand settled respectfully against her upper back, careful not to crowd her. She placed her other hand lightly on his shoulder. At first, their movements felt cautious, tentative, two people learning how to inhabit the same moment. But then something shifted. Lauren exhaled, and Benjamin gently pulled her a fraction closer, not enough to startle, just enough to let her know she was safe. "You don't have to be strong right now," he murmured. "Just be." She let her head tilt slightly toward him, her cheek brushing the faint fabric of his suit. The scent of cedar and something clean, Benjamin's scent, wrapped around her. It wasn't overwhelming like Michael's expensive colognes. It was subtle, comforting, familiar. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "For what?" he asked. "For being here." Benjamin's thumb brushed a soft arc along the back of her hand. "Lauren, I've wanted to be here for years. I just didn't want to get in the way of your life." "You weren't in the way," she said quietly. "I just didn't see myself clearly back then." "You do now," he replied. "And it's a beautiful thing to witness." Lauren felt emotions swell in her chest: vulnerability, gratitude, a gentle ache for the years she'd lost to someone who never truly valued her. But also hope, a fragile, flickering hope that maybe, just maybe, she still had room in her heart for something new. As they danced, guests offered smiles and nods of encouragement. Some wiped tears. They weren't watching a scandal anymore. They were watching a woman rise gracefully, defiantly, into a new chapter. Lauren lifted her gaze to Benjamin's. His eyes were warm, steady, full of unspoken admiration. "Ben," she murmured, unsure how to begin. But before she could finish, someone cleared their throat behind them. It was the chairman again, this time with a subtle, amused smile. "Mrs. Hayes," he said, "I don't mean to interrupt your dance, but several donors are asking for you. They'd like to congratulate you personally." Lauren blinked, surprised. "Me? Of course you," he chuckled. "You're the highlight of the night." Benjamin looked at her with a spark of pride. "See? I told you." 5. Lauren laughed softly, a sound she hadn't heard from herself in a long time. She turned back toward the chairman, ready to step away, but before she could move, Benjamin gently tightened his hold, leaning close enough for only her to hear. "I'll let you go," he whispered, "if you promise you'll come back." Lauren's breath caught. "Ben," she murmured, her cheeks warming. He smiled softly. "Take your time. I'm not going anywhere." Zand. She stepped back, heart full, breath unsteady, then turned toward the waiting donors. But as she walked away, a figure emerged at the far edge of the ballroom, someone watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. And when the figure stepped forward into the light, Lauren felt her entire body go still. The figure stepped fully into the light, and Lauren's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't Michael. It was her mother, Elaine Hayes, a woman who rarely traveled, rarely left Chicago, whose gentle nature had always been the quiet compass of Lauren's life. She stood near the ballroom entrance, wrapped in a soft navy shawl, her eyes shimmering with tenderness and worry. "Mom?" Lauren whispered, disbelief softening her voice. Elaine opened her arms. "Come here, sweetheart." Lauren moved without thinking, the world around her falling away. She stepped into her mother's embrace, the familiar warmth grounding her, soothing her in ways nothing else could. The steady beat of her mother's heart felt like home, something stable after a night of earthquakes. "Oh, honey," Elaine murmured as she held her close. "I saw the live stream. Everything you went through tonight." Lauren swallowed hard, the last few hours crashing over her in a wave of exhaustion and relief. "Mom, I didn't expect. How did you get here so fast?" Elaine brushed a hand through her daughter's hair. "You called me last week. Your voice was different. Cracked. I knew something wasn't right. And then tonight, when the news showed Michael being escorted out." She shook her head gently. No mother would stay home after seeing her child endure that. Lauren's eyes stung. "I'm okay," she whispered, though her voice trembled. Her mother pulled back slightly, giving her a long, searching look. "Are you?" The question lingered, not accusing, not demanding, but inviting honesty. And for the first time in years, Lauren allowed herself to tell the truth. "I'm tired," she admitted. "I'm so tired of fighting to be seen, tired of shrinking, tired of fixing everything alone." Her voice cracked softly. "But I feel different tonight. Stronger, lighter. For the first time, I feel like I'm stepping out of something dark." "One." Elaine cupped her cheek gently. "That's because you finally stopped carrying someone else's weight. Sweetheart, you gave more to that marriage than anyone could have. But now you get to give to yourself." Lauren inhaled shakily. "I don't even know where to start." "One small step at a time," her mother said warmly. "Maybe start by remembering who Lauren was before she became Mrs. Hayes." The words struck deep, because somewhere along the way, she had lost herself entirely, but tonight, she had caught a glimpse of the woman she used to be. A woman who had dreams, passions, purpose, and suddenly, the ache in her chest loosened. Elaine looked around the ballroom, her expression softening. "And I saw the way that man looked at you." Lauren's cheeks warmed. "I'm not saying anything," Elaine said with a mischievous glint. "I'm just acknowledging it." Lauren laughed lightly, something small and sweet breaking through her exhaustion. "Ben has been supportive. And patient," Elaine added. "Very patient." Before Lauren could respond, a staff member approached politely. "Mrs. Hayes, the donors are still waiting to speak with you." Lauren nodded. "Of course, I'll be right there." She squeezed her mother's hand. "Stay, please." "Always," Elaine said. As Lauren returned to the ballroom floor, a sense of calm washed over her. Guests greeted her warmly. Several praised her courage, her poise, her grace under the strain of the night. She smiled, thanked them, listened present in a way she hadn't been in years. Eventually, she found a quiet corner and sank into a seat, her body sinking deeper into a sense of release. Her clutch buzzed softly, a reminder of the real world beyond this gilded room. She pulled out her iPhone, a message from an unknown number. The text read, "Mrs. Hayes, we've uncovered more irregularities tied to your husband. This concerns your personal assets. We need to speak with you immediately." Lauren's heart skipped. "Personal assets?" She typed back quickly. "Who is this?" A moment later, a reply came. "This is your husband's financial investigator. And you need to see the documents before he does." Lauren looked up, scanning the ballroom instinctively. Something cold rippled down her spine. Her healing night wasn't over yet, and as she rose from her seat, she realized the next truth she uncovered might change everything once again. Lauren stepped quickly into the quieter hallway outside the ballroom, her pulse pounding as she gripped her phone. The message from the investigator replayed in her mind, each word tightening the knot in her stomach. "Irregularities tied to your personal assets." She had been prepared for Michael's arrogance, his lies, his unraveling, but this was something deeper, something dangerous. A second message buzzed. "I'm in the lobby. Black suit. Briefcase. Ask for Mr. Dalton." She inhaled sharply. Mr. Dalton. She recognized the name, one of the senior auditors contracted by major Manhattan firms. This was no random investigator. This was someone dangerously credible. Benjamin appeared at her side before she could take another step. "Lauren? What happened?" She hesitated for a beat out of habit. But tonight wasn't about hiding. It wasn't about protecting Michael. It wasn't even about appearing strong. "It's something about my financial accounts," she said quietly. "They want to meet." Benjamin's expression darkened instantly, protective instincts rising like a shield. "You're not going alone." Before she could argue, her mother approached, worry etched across her face. "Is everything all right?" Lauren forced a small, reassuring smile. "I just need to check on something. I'll be back soon." "Sen." Elaine squeezed her hand with quiet strength. "Whatever it is, sweetheart, you don't face it alone." With Benjamin by her side, Lauren stepped into the elevator. The soft hum as they descended softened the noise inside her head, but only slightly. She stared at her reflection in the mirrored wall, poised, elegant, steady, and barely recognized herself. But for once, the unfamiliarity felt hopeful. When the elevator doors opened, the plaza's marble lobby stretched before them, gleaming under soft lights. A man in a charcoal black suit stood near a corner column, a briefcase in hand. He looked exactly as described. Calm, serious, unshakably professional. "Mrs. Hayes?" he asked. "Yes," Lauren said, stepping forward. "I'm Lauren Hayes." "And I'm Benjamin Carter," Benjamin added, voice low but firm. "Anything you say to her, you say with me present." "Mr." Dalton nodded respectfully, then gestured to a more private seating area. "This won't take long, but you need to see this." Saturday Dalton opened his briefcase with a soft click and pulled out several thick documents, clipped neatly into folders. "Mrs. Hayes," he began, "during our investigation of your husband's misconduct, we discovered several accounts linked to your name." Lauren frowned. "My name? I haven't opened any accounts recently." "I know," Dalton said. "These accounts were created without your direct involvement. But they use your identity, your signature, even your social security number." Lauren felt the blood drain from her face. Forgery. Michael had forged her information. "Why would he do that?" she whispered. Dalton slid one folder toward her. "Because these accounts were used to transfer funds. He tied illegal transactions to your name. If this hadn't come to us before the arrest, you would have been implicated." "See?" Lauren felt her hands tremble as she scanned the documents, her forged signature at the bottom of forms she had never seen, transfers routed to accounts she had never heard of. Benjamin leaned forward, anger simmering under controlled calm. He tried to drag her down with him. Dalton nodded grimly. Yes, and he almost succeeded. A cold wave washed over her. It wasn't just betrayal, it was sabotage. Deliberate, calculated, cruel. "Will I be held responsible?" Lauren asked, her voice cracking. "No," Dalton said firmly. "We can prove the signatures were forged. And now that your cooperation is on record, we can protect you fully." She closed her eyes, tears burning behind them. Relief mixed with grief, the grief of realizing just how little Michael ever valued her. Dalton continued. "There's one more thing. Your husband attempted to access a trust fund under your name last week." "A trust fund?" Lauren blinked. "I don't." Benjamin stiffened. "It wasn't her fund. It was the one I set up years ago, before she married him." Lauren's eyes shot open. "What?" Benjamin exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. "It was meant for you, for the work you were doing. I never told you because you were building a life with him. I didn't want to complicate things." Dalton added, "Mr. Hayes tried to withdraw from it illegally. We blocked it in time." Lauren's heart twisted. "Ben, why would you even do that for me?" Benjamin met her gaze open, vulnerable, full of truth. "Because even back then," he said softly, "I believed in you. Long before tonight. Long before he ever tried to break you." Lauren's breath stilled. This wasn't just about money. This was about something deeper. Something she had missed. Something he had never stopped feeling. She opened her mouth to speak. But before she could, Dalton's phone buzzed loudly. He glanced at the screen, then looked up sharply. "Mrs. Hayes, we have a problem." Lauren's stomach dropped. "What now?" Dalton stood, urgency tightening his features. "Michael's lawyers just filed an emergency claim, and he's trying to shift blame directly onto you." Lauren felt the world tilt, her pulse hammering against her ribs. "He's what?" she breathed. Dalton snapped his briefcase shut and lowered his voice. "Michael's legal team filed an emergency motion claiming you authorized the transfers. They're trying to redirect the investigation toward you, make it look like you were the one siphoning donor money." Lauren's blood ran cold. "But you just said the signatures were forged." "They were," Dalton confirmed. "But the filing means the court must review it. If they push hard enough, it could delay clearing your name. And if the media gets to the documents before we do." His jaw tightened. "It could get very messy." Benjamin stood abruptly, fury simmering beneath the calm exterior he usually wore. "So he's trying to bury her to save himself." "Exactly," Dalton said. "This is his last desperate move before he's fully cornered." Lauren rubbed her forehead, feeling a headache pulse behind her eyes. "How is this even possible?" "He's in custody." "His lawyers aren't," Dalton replied. "Michael built his whole life on manipulation. Tonight didn't break that habit, it just made him reckless." Benjamin moved closer, placing a gentle hand on the back of her chair. Lauren, you're not going through this alone. Whatever he files, whatever he tries, he won't succeed. Dalton slid another document toward her. There's only one way to shut this down quickly. You need to sign a formal declaration disputing every forged account and authorize us to submit the original documents from the Foundation's investigation. With this, plus your testimony, we can undo his filing before it causes real damage. Lauren's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the pen laid before her. The Mont Blanc felt heavy, weighted by everything she'd endured: years of gaslighting, accusations, shrinking herself just to keep peace. She took a deep breath and signed. Even her signature felt different now, stronger, steadier. Dalton reviewed it, nodding. Good, we'll submit it immediately. I'll also notify the committee that you're cooperating fully. That protects you publicly if any accusations leak. Lauren swallowed. Thank you. Dalton rose. One more thing, he added quietly. Once this is over, you should consider filing charges of your own. Identity fraud, forgery, financial abuse. You have grounds. Lauren stared down at her hands, the same hands that once ironed Michael's shirts, typed his emails, held their marriage together. Now they were holding the evidence of his betrayal. I'll think about it, she whispered. Dalton nodded and stepped away to make calls. The lobby fell quiet around her. Lauren slowly leaned back, feeling the tension slowly ease from her shoulders. Benjamin, still standing beside her, studied her carefully. Are you all right? Lauren let out a slow, shaky exhale. I don't know how I'm supposed to feel. Part of me is furious. Part of me is numb. And part of me... She trailed off. Part of you what? Benjamin asked gently. She looked up at him, her voice soft. Part of me is relieved it's all out in the open. Benjamin's features softened. It needed to come out, Lauren. You've lived in the dark for too long. She gave a small, weary smile. I guess I have. He pulled a chair closer, sitting beside her. You've handled everything tonight with more grace than most people manage in a lifetime. You didn't lash out. You didn't break. You stood your ground. Pie. Lauren laughed weakly. It didn't feel graceful. It was, he said simply. Heat rose in her chest, warm, comforting, unfamiliar. Ben, everything you did tonight, the sponsorship, the trust fund, standing up for me, why? He met her gaze, his voice quiet but filled with conviction. Because people like you deserve someone in their corner. And because loving you. He hesitated, breath catching. Was never something I stopped doing. Lauren froze. Her heart stuttered. Benjamin looked away for a moment, gathering himself. I know the timing is terrible. I know you've been through hell tonight. But I won't pretend anymore. Not after seeing what you survived. Lauren's lips parted, her pulse fluttering like wings. Ben, she whispered. Before she could finish, the elevator chimed behind them. Elaine stepped out wide-eyed, breathless. Lauren, she said urgently, you need to come upstairs. Now. Lauren stood instantly. Mom? What happened? Elaine swallowed, glancing between her daughter and Benjamin. It's about Michael, she said softly. Benjamin tensed. What now? Elaine took a breath. His lawyers are here. And they're demanding to speak with Lauren privately. Lauren followed her mother and Benjamin toward the private conference suite on the mezzanine level of the plaza, her pulse thudding in her throat. The world outside the ballroom had grown quieter, more sterile, the hallway lights casting long reflections on the polished marble. Every step she took felt heavier, like she was walking toward the final knot in a rope she'd been tangled in for years. Two men in tailored navy suits waited outside the suite. Their briefcases sat neatly by their polished shoes, but their faces were strained, tight with urgency. When they saw Lauren, they straightened. Mrs. Hayes, the taller one said stiffly, we represent your husband. Benjamin immediately tensed beside her. She's not speaking to anyone without me present. The shorter lawyer raised a hand. We're not here to harass Mrs. Hayes. We need her cooperation to protect her. Lauren frowned. Protect me? From what? I thought Michael's motion was meant to hurt me. It was, the taller lawyer admitted. But things have changed. He opened the suite door and gestured inside. Please. V. Lauren hesitated, but Benjamin gave a reassuring nod, staying glued to her side. Elaine followed quietly, refusing to leave her daughter alone. Once inside, the door shut with a soft thud. The air felt thick, heavy with the gravity of whatever was coming. The lawyers exchanged looks, then the taller one spoke first. "Mrs. Hayes, your husband's actions tonight were desperate, irrational, but in custody." He paused, choosing his words carefully. He panicked, and he said things that severely implicate himself. Lauren's brows furrowed. "What exactly did he say?" "He admitted," the lawyer said slowly, "to forging your signature." Lauren's breath caught. The second lawyer added, "And to moving funds into accounts under your name in case his own were traced." A cold chill slid down her spine. "He admitted that?" Both men nodded. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Because," the taller lawyer continued, "he also confessed that he never intended for you to take the fall." "Not truly. He said he just wanted to scare you into staying." Lauren felt her stomach twist sharply. Fear, control, manipulation, all wrapped in a final act of sabotage. It was the ugliest truth yet. Benjamin's hand curled into a fist at his side. "And now?" he demanded. "Now," the shorter lawyer said, "he wants to negotiate." Lauren blinked. "Negotiate?" The lawyer opened his briefcase and slid a manila folder across the table. "Mr. Hayes is willing to sign a full confession," he said, "if Mrs. Hayes agrees not to pursue personal charges against him beyond the embezzlement case." Lauren stared at the folder. A full confession. Total accountability. It would free her completely and permanently. Her mother touched her arm gently. "Sweetheart, think carefully." Benjamin looked at her with quiet intensity. "Whatever you choose, I'm with you." Lauren inhaled deeply. For years, she had prayed for Michael to finally tell the truth, to acknowledge the damage he had done, to stop twisting her world into knots. But the reality of holding that power, now the ability to decide his fate, felt heavy, like a weight she didn't ask for but couldn't ignore. She opened the folder. Inside was a typed statement, already signed. Michael's confession. His lies dismantled by his own pen. Her hands trembled faintly. "I won't pursue personal charges," she said quietly. "Not because he deserves mercy, but because I deserve peace." Benjamin exhaled softly, admiration flickering in his eyes. The lawyers nodded, relieved. "Then we will file this immediately. Mrs. Hayes, you are officially cleared." Completely. A breath she didn't know she'd been holding released from her chest. Cleared. Free. Finally. The lawyers collected their things and left swiftly. As the door closed behind them, silence fell, a thick, emotional quiet that washed over Lauren like warm water. Elaine pulled her into a soft embrace. "You did the right thing, sweetheart." Lauren's throat tightened. "I feel lighter." Benjamin stepped closer. "You should. You just won a war you never asked for." She looked up at him, really looked, and something inside her softened, unraveled, rewove. His presence felt like shelter, and she realized she was no longer afraid of what came next. Before she could speak, a staff member rushed into the room, breathless. "Mrs. Hayes, there's something happening downstairs." Lauren blinked. "What now?" The woman smiled breathlessly. "The entire ballroom is chanting your name. They want you back." The chant rose from the ballroom like a tide, gentle at first, then growing in strength, in warmth, in unity. "Lauren, Lauren, Lauren." It echoed up the staircase, carried by hundreds of voices filled with admiration, relief, and something deeper, respect. Real, earned respect. Lauren stood frozen for a moment inside the conference suite, her hands still resting on the manila folder containing Michael's confession. The same man who once made her feel invisible had finally been overshadowed, not by scandal, not by pity, but by the woman he tried so hard to dim. Elaine squeezed her daughter's hand. "They're calling for you, sweetheart." Benjamin stepped beside her, his expression soft but proud. "You deserve this moment, every second of it." Lauren inhaled deeply, straightening her shoulders. She wasn't trembling anymore. She wasn't uncertain. The weight that had sat on her chest for years, fear, shame, exhaustion, seemed to lift as she took her first step toward the door. They walked together down the corridor, but when they reached the top of the staircase, Lauren paused. "I need to go in alone," she said quietly. Benjamin searched her eyes, then nodded. "I'll be right behind you." Elaine kissed her cheek. Go shine. Lauren gathered her dress, placed a hand on the railing, and descended the marble staircase. The ballroom fell into a hush as soon as she appeared at the landing. Then, like a spark igniting dry wood, the room erupted into applause, loud, thunderous, emotional. She reached the final step, and a donor stepped aside reverently, creating a path straight to the stage. As she walked, people reached out to touch her hand, offer hugs, whisper words of kindness. You inspired us tonight. You stood tall. You showed what real strength looks like. Lauren felt tears sting her eyes, not of sadness, but of release. When she reached the stage, the chairman immediately handed her the microphone. Mrs. Hayes, he said warmly, everyone here wants to hear from you. Lauren looked out at the crowd, the same crowd that once watched her unravel, now watching her rise. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady and warm. Tonight has been overwhelming, she began, the room instantly quieting. Not because of what I lost, but because of what I found. She glanced toward the back of the room, where Benjamin stood. Their eyes met, and something soft bloomed in her chest. I found clarity, strength, and a reminder that a person's worth is never defined by someone who fails to see it. A few people nodded, others wiped tears. For years, I thought love meant making yourself smaller, she continued. Now I know real love helps you grow. Doesn't dim you. Doesn't break you. Doesn't bury you. The crowd murmured in agreement. And thanks to you all, I'm stepping into a new beginning. Not as someone's wife, not as someone's shadow, but as myself. Far. The applause returned, warm, heartfelt, rising like a wave that lifted her higher. When it quieted, she smiled softly. And for those wondering, yes, the investigation is resolved. I am cleared, completely. A collective exhale of relief swept the room. She smiled, her voice turning lighter. Now, enough about the hard things. Shall we celebrate? Laughter rippled across the ballroom. The orchestra began to play again as guests returned to the floor. Lauren stepped down from the stage, her heart full, her spirit calm. Benjamin met her halfway. You were incredible, he said softly. She smiled. I feel free. He took a breath, then gently offered his hand again. Then, maybe now, you're ready for the part I wanted to tell you earlier. Lauren tilted her head. What part? He stepped closer, his voice low, hopeful. That I'd like the chance to show you the kind of love you always deserved. Her breath caught. Warmth spread through her chest, slow, tender, unforced. Ben, she whispered. He took her hand, thumb brushing lightly against her skin. No pressure, no rushing. Just a beginning. If you want it. Lauren gazed at him, feeling her heart settle into something steady and sure. Yes, she breathed, I want it. He smiled soft, deep, real. And when he drew her gently into his arms, the ballroom lights dimmed, the music swelled, and applause washed over them like a blessing. After everything she had survived, Lauren finally stepped into a life that was hers. Her new beginning. Her justice. Her joy. But as the night glittered around them, a staff member hurried toward the stage, holding a sealed envelope addressed to Lauren Hayes, marked, Urgent. So, that's where our story closes tonight. And if you are still here with me, right now, listening until the final moment, then something in this journey must have touched your heart in a way words alone can't describe. Maybe it reminded you of your own strength. Maybe it whispered to a part of you that's been quiet for too long. Lauren's story isn't just drama, it's a mirror. It shows us that walking away from what breaks us is not weakness, but courage. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." And that's exactly what healing looks like. Sometimes life doesn't protect us from pain, it shapes us through it. Sometimes the betrayal we fear becomes the doorway we needed. If tonight's story made you breathe deeper, think differently, or feel even a small spark of hope, then stay with us. Like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and don't forget to subscribe. Our little corner here is for people who feel deeply, who rise slowly, and who deserve so much more than the world ever told them. And remember, you're not alone. I'm right here with you.